Good day. My name is Chris Barano, and today I'm speaking with Kambiz Nafisi. Kambiz is the creator of Coming Full Circle, an amazing course that helps students remove self-limiting beliefs and heal from traumatic events. This is a continuation of a series of talks that I'm having with Kambiz to learn more about the course, but also overall understand how to be more mindful in today's world full of notifications and mobile devices and distractions, etc. Good day, Kambiz. How's it going where you are, and where are you today?
I'm in Tampa, Florida. The listeners might want to know this is Christmas vacation time, so I'm in Tampa temporarily. Normally, I live in Washington, D.C., so I have a beautiful surrounding and very happy to have our talk and answer any questions. What we want to do is just bring up everyday life questions
Yeah,
that are pertinent to the viewers.
yeah. Thinking about everyday life problems that I see in my own life and even with my family. I was just visiting my family at Christmas last weekend, and I notice my mom and my dad and my sister and my brother-in-law from time to time looking at their phone. And 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, this would not have been the case. People used to come together and have conversations. And I notice it also in the building where I live. People are more withdrawn and into their own worlds. Um, I have found through meditation and Kriya Yoga and working with you over the past few years, Kambiz, that my mind has become much more settled. Can you tell us a bit about the people out there that feel anxiety from this, kind of distracting modern lifestyle? What are some things that people can do to settle their minds and become more focused?
Right. Well, the first part of my answer would be to explain the nature of the mind. And there are really two minds, if you think about it. And so by understanding the two minds, you understand why people are so attracted to external distractions, the phone, what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. So one mind is just a busy mind. It's your intellectual mind. It's a mind that's been highly conditioned by all of your past experiences, memories of the past, any effect that your parents had on you, let's say the American, European culture, all of that is stored like a software program into what yoga calls the lower mind. So if I have a first name and a last name and an ego, that whole package is part of the lower mind. Now, that lower mind is like an engine, like a motor that's constantly turning. And the question it's always asking itself is, what's next on the agenda? What's next? So imagine a motor, an engine that is idling, and the engine is looking to get into gear to go forward with the next project. And this mind, this lower mind, is always looking for the next agenda. If you don't shift it into forward gear, it'll dig a hole into the ground and take you right to hell. Why? Because an engine is turning and churning anyways. It's just on, it's always on, and it's looking for the next direction. And if you don't put it in gear and give it a direction, it'll go down, it'll dig the ground and go down into hell. What do I mean by hell? Any kind of addiction, too much viewing of the TV, looking at the phone too many times per day. Again, because this mind is so restless, it's so incapable of being in the moment that it's looking for the next agenda. This is when the magic appears. When the busy mind, when that engine, that churning engine, becomes hopeless. Meaning, when it realizes that there are no agendas, let's say we take somebody to a pristine island, there's nothing going on but the waves of the ocean and the wind going through the trees. When the busy mind realizes that, it becomes hopeless. The moment it becomes hopeless, it kind of tumbles down. It gets off of center stage. And lo and behold, right after the busy mind gives up, right after it sees that there is no next agenda, the older brother, the higher mind, the mindful mind, the one that's able to live in the moment and be fascinated by simply what's going on in the moment, that other mind appears. So it's as if we draw a curtain. Here's the crazy mind. We draw the curtain. Right behind it is what we call the transcendent mind. Transcendent mind, much like the animal mind, is able to look at the moment. Like right now, I've got Tampa Bay in front of me, and there's lush vegetation, and there's some ripples on the water. And what I just mentioned about Tampa Bay is interesting enough for the transcendent mind because it's not boring. There's a bunch of pelicans in the water, there's beautiful trees, there's ripples. So it is not boring. So the answer is, if any circumstance allows the intellectual, hectic, busy mind to become hopeless of the next agenda, it kind of steps away for a moment. As soon as it steps away, you don't lose your intelligence. As soon as it steps away, a crack is introduced in consciousness, and through that crack, light shines in. And the light that I'm talking about is just mindfulness. So I'm saying any human being that creates a temporary gap in the moment, in that gap, light of mindfulness naturally shines in. So your higher mind is very much a natural part of you. It's there.
What can somebody do that is not a meditator or who has not been exposed to these concepts of mindfulness, but knows something is wrong, knows that they're recognizing that they're being distracted constantly. They don't feel at peace. They don't sleep well. They don't have, they have anxiety. What can someone do to help mitigate that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the first step would be to create that momentary break. By break, I mean, let's say the mind is just going, television, iPhone, spreadsheets, whatever. If you create a break, a momentary break, then through that break, through the crack, you get your first experience, direct experience that, there is another way of living. So how do we create the break when we're doing vape or taking tranquilizers or just driving ourselves mad? One recommendation I have is that you touch the tips of your fingers as a physical reminder to be here now. This is a physical reminder to become mindful, to step into the moment, to cut it out in terms of the hecticness of the mind. Just cut it out, break the moment. So this physical gesture will be one of your best friends throughout the day. You just touch your fingertips. That means, hey, where are you? Are you here? Are you breathing? Are you noticing your breathing? Now, after you remind yourself physically, I would then suggest that for just a few seconds, you become mindful of like 2 inhalations and 2 exhalations. Following the breath just for a few seconds with mindfulness will widen this gap so that we allow this light of mindfulness to pour in. And as you do these exercises, you're building up the concentration muscle. In the beginning, it takes concentration, it takes effort. It takes the building of concentration muscles so that you can stay with 2 inhalations and 2 exhalations. After the concentration experiment is underway and you start to build just some small muscles, you see that concentration then leads into an effortless state, which we could call transcendence or mindfulness. It's like in NASA when they want to get a rocket off out of the Earth's gravity, you know, you're burning up 70,000 tons of TNT to get this Hulk off the ground. But once it's in a no gravity zone, you can shut off the engines and the craft will fly by itself. Same thing in a world of mindfulness and meditation. In the beginning, you work on your concentration muscles and you strengthen them. So for example, you stare at a white wall and you remain in waiting mode, waiting and waiting for the next thought. As long as you're in waiting mode and waiting for the next thought will not appear. Why? Because as you're waiting, the transcendent mind, the mindful mind, will take over the busy mind. Another exercise, you take your hand up and down like this, and you stare at the tip of your fingers. As you take the hand up, you're breathing in. As you take your hand down, you're breathing out. And you do this for like 12 motions, basically 12 seconds. And if you can stay with the fingertips, and if you can breathe along with the hand motion for 12 motions, you've already proved yourself to be a highly concentrated person. Because one of the ancient sages of yoga, Patanjali, says, if you can focus for 12 seconds, you're already a hero. And 12 seconds is not that long. I also want to point out why concentration is so important. See, in ancient spirituality, they say the doorway, the gateway to inner contentment, to inner peace, even to bliss, the hallway, the gateway leading to contentment, to calmness and bliss, is concentration. So at first that sounds odd, like what is bliss and what does inner peace have to do with concentration? But if we have anybody in the audience that has ever done weaving, like basket weaving, or tennis, or golf, or cooking, they will tell you that when they are engaged with their favorite hobby, there'll be moments when the focus becomes so great that they will achieve states of inner happiness. So if somebody's really enthralled with gourmet cooking, while they are mixing the ingredients, they are totally immersed in the activity. Immersion in an activity will lead to inner peace, to calmness of the mind, and bliss. So let's just backtrack for a moment. At first, we're building muscles. We're waiting for the next thought. We're following the breath for 12 hand movements. Why? Because the act of concentration leads you to the inner experience of peace, contentment, and bliss. Once you get a little taste of inner peace, contentment, the beauty of the present moment, all of a sudden, the TV, the mobile phone, the distractions lose their taste, because you're getting a taste of something else that brings you more satisfaction. Now, why more satisfaction? You know, I'm watching something incredible on YouTube on my brand new iPad. So what could be more beautiful than that? What's more beautiful than that is getting in touch with your own existence, your core. And this doesn't sound too interesting until you have a direct experience. Anybody who can make contact with the center of themselves, with their heartbeat, with their own existence, to know that what society is doing is not necessarily what I want to be doing. What do I want to be doing? What does my heart want to do?
Yeah.
It's a very rich experience.
Yeah. I I talked to a gentleman a few months ago in his upper 50s, and we were talking about the concentration thing. And he proclaimed to me repeatedly in this very short conversation that he can't concentrate, he has ADHD. And I was reading an article, Time Magazine article, that talks about the rise, like people can't concentrate because of phones, distractions, etc. And this rise in diagnoses of ADHD and then a shortage of medication for ADHD. And my immediate reaction to my friend, and he is my friend, my immediate reaction was that, well, I think that some people assume they have a disease or a medical condition that they can't control. And I've never identified that way personally, but certainly other people do, so much so that they have to go to doctors and take medication and all that, introduce foreign substances into their body. Um, it seems kind of crazy to me in the way that this world is constructed to fix things that it actually creates. When what I have learned through working with you, through learning from you, is that really the answers are already inside of us. The DNA, our core self. We don't need these outer distractions. Um, have you, in the time that you've been working with people, have you come across people that have taken medications, whether for anxiety or ADHD or other things that you've been able to show them another path?
Yeah, and the way you start showing somebody the path is is to help them understand the role of the mind, the role of the subconscious mind, and the fact that this mind, which is a central computer driving your life, that mind, in a way, is like a little child seeking peace and security. You take one of the top students of MIT or Harvard, excellent IQ, and they're just busy. They're becoming sleepless because they're on track to becoming a partner at a law firm, and it's work, 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 work. And they start to lose contact with just a central part of themselves.
Yeah.
Now, society oohs and ahs at their IQ and their income, but what that person is not understanding is that the same mind who scored top grades at Harvard, that same mind is still a little child, really, really hoping to find some sanctuary, to come back home, to connect with intuition, to connect with one's true wishes, to connect with one's inner peace. So my answer is, if you give the leash, if you give up, if you let go of the leash and you give full control of your life to the same mind that is on partnership track at the law firm, that's just the wrong thing to do, because that same mind that is achieving so much success, that is still just an instrument. That is an instrument. That mind is not your soul. That mind is not the wishes of your heart. That mind is not the inner sanctuary of your existence. It's an instrument. So one answer I'm giving to the audience here is the reason we have vape, the reason we have so many tranquilizers, the reason we have all these people claiming they have ADHD is because they're taking this computer, the mind, and they're making it a chief commanding officer of life. Whereas this five-star general is in actuality a little kid that is running around, switching channels, switching between the iPhone and TV and vape, trying desperately to come back home and find some peace. And that is not boring. Coming back to your own sanity, coming back to breathing, noticing your heartbeat, noticing Tampa Bay, noticing the dimple in your wife's chin. That is not boring. But this computer is just crazy. It's just looking for the next agenda. Now, if we break the moment and give this central computer some techniques, if we give it some hope that there is an elder brother called the mindful mind, the transcendent mind, no matter how brilliant the thinking mind is, it's still going to be curious to see if there is a higher mind that can just be more in touch with life before it's too late. Because one life, one human life goes by very, very quickly. And I meet a lot of highly successful, somewhat bitter older people because this thinking mind, the crazed mind took over, and they missed out on actually tasting and experiencing life, the grandchildren, a great hobby, inner peace. The very first step that I teach to my students in the Coming Full Circle self-transformation, the very first step, I try to have them buy into the fact that what you're seeing through the lens of your mind may not be utter reality. Believe it or not, amongst 9 billion people on Earth, the vast majority think that what they are seeing through the lens of their own thinking mind is utter reality. That couldn't be farther from truth, because any single mind has had conditioning. Like the basketball coach didn't choose you for first string in 8th grade, and you think that you're an unlucky loser. Okay, that's an interpretation. But once that creeps into your mind, you're looking at the city of Boston through the lens of being a loser, or any number of millions of perceptions that one individual mind has. So what I teach in Full Circle is, for the next 60 days, I want you folks to mistrust, at least initially, mistrust what your thinking mind is doing. And, you know, that's very scary to people. They say, well, the only lens that I'm looking through is a single mind. And what I do is I drive a wedge between the thinking mind and the other one who's noticing, the one who's noticing restlessness, the one who's noticing your mood after you've had a fight with your wife. The noticer, which we call the quiet observer or the transcendent mind, that's always there. Now, if we don't drive this wedge between the one that's been conditioned and the central computer that wants to drive your actions, and the other one being some energy field that notices your mood, notices your hunger, notices your fatigue. If we don't drive that wedge, you are left with a single instrument.
Yeah.
And that single instrument could very easily become distorted. I mean, if your grandfather went through the Great Depression in Kansas, then you as the grandson may still not buy yourself a motorboat in Boston Harbor, because granddad's message from the Great Depression is still in your mind through your dad, that, you know, we shouldn't squander money on folly and useless toys. And you weren't even there in the Great Depression, but this stuff gets handed down.
Yeah.
And I can say the same thing about ADHD. I can say, okay, well, easily 50% of everybody who's claiming to have this disease, this message of ADHD is just being passed down, and people are being lazy with this. It's like, oh, I must have it too. so let me pop a pill.
Right.
And instead of being lazy, why don't you take an oath of mindfulness? Decide today that my thinking mind may not be an accurate instrument. And I'm just going to be curious to see if there's another mind who's the quiet observer, who's wiser, more peaceful, more settled.
Well, is it fair to say that there are people out there that are so heavily identified with that conditioned mind that there's fear about driving that wedge?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I would say you and I would have it too. The first time, if Kambiz was my own teacher and I was on day one of Full Circle, and Kambiz told me to mistrust my thinking mind, I'd be very scared because I would think he's trying to drive me crazy. But given enough trust and given enough pain,
Yeah.
see, the best students have enough pain, so they're willing to try something other than just vape.
Yeah.
So then given enough pain, people are willing to try and see, is there a quiet observer? Is there any such thing as mindfulness? Does it make sense to step into the present moment? Technique-wise, an Indian guru named Ramana Maharshi introduced a very powerful technique in terms of driving that wedge between the thinking mind, the conditioned mind, and the other mind that is more present, more mindful, the quiet observer. And Ramana Maharshi's technique was, anytime you have a self-limiting emotion, anytime you do have a self-limiting habit or a belief like I'm not worthwhile, anything self-limiting, Ramana would say, right at that moment, just ask a simple question. Who thought that? Who is feeling worthless? Who is feeling insecure? And he said, just ask the question. Do not look for the answer. Do not analyze. He said, all I want you to do for a single second, during the mood, during the crazed moment of the mind, just ask the question, who is crazed? Who is nervous? Who wants to puff smoke into the air? And he was quite correct in thinking that when you ask this question, the asking of the question creates a momentary crack in this moment. We break the moment by simply asking, who's in a bad mood? I once prevented somebody from committing suicide on one of my radio shows. He called and said, well, I've got a gun here and I'm about to blow out my brains. And I said to him, hand the phone over to the other one. And he said, what? I said, I want to talk to the other one. So suddenly I hear, hello? I said, are you the other one? He said, yes. I said, well, how's the other one feeling? He said, well, he's hopeless. He's done with life. Another time, I was in my office doing personal counseling with somebody, and they started talking about suicide. I took a lighter and set the Kleenex box in between us on fire. So the patient went, ooh, started putting out the fire, and that created a momentary break, and mindfulness slipped in.
Detachment.
Yeah. So when Ramana says, ask the question, who wants to go to the bar? Who's feeling super lonely? Who is the one who's hopeless? Simply asking the question will create this little gap, and it'll detach you from, let's say, the idea of blowing out your brains. The people who commit suicide cannot detach from that mood at that moment. We have many more talks about this, but if I were to help somebody achieve much greater happiness, one of the first things I would do for them is to have them understand the mind, understand that this conditioned mind is a child, even at the top of Harvard University, is still looking for home. is still looking for a sanctuary. So you cannot give the reins to this mind. So then I introduce a whole bunch of techniques like following the breath for 12 motions of the hand, staring at a white wall, waiting and waiting for the next thought, which will never come. Or Ramana Maharshi's technique. Who's the one who's in a bad mood? Who wants to smoke a cigarette? Without any judgment, you just ask the question. All of these techniques create a break so you detach from identifying with what your conditioned mind is programmed to do. At this point, I want to say goodbye to the friends for today, but we've opened up a big, big topic. And the topic is, how do we tap into inborn natural sanity? All we've got to do is look at 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. They have inborn happiness. They are intuitive. They can ask for their needs. And for as long as we don't socialize these little kids too much, they're very much in touch with their center. So those are the words that I want to leave you with.
Well, Kambiz, I appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you very much, and we will be speaking again soon.
Nice to be here, and I'm very happy to continue.
Very good.